The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
Coming to you from underneath a peach blossom, it's time for an episode of Be Awesome. Find positivity throughout your life and work, just like our mascot rooster, Steve the Jerk.
All right, here we go with another episode of the Be Awesome podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Peach. We are without Mark Resnick. Today he's up to his eyeballs. So we're actually recording 3 to 7 episodes at a clip. So if Mark doesn't make it for one, he doesn't make it for any, unless he can dial in. But he's working on some big project stuff that I didn't want him to be pulled away from. So I'm on my own, but we have a return guest. So it's kind of like having a co-host of sorts, and known each other forever, 40 years, I think is what we agreed on last time. Author, teacher, friend, all around awesome guy, Mr. John Cady. Welcome back from February 26th to now. We're going to get caught up.
Thank you for having me back.
My pleasure. It's our pleasure, our honor. We said we'd have you back. Didn't realize it would be this quick, although I think you told us your second book was getting released. And so you knew your second book was getting released.
Yes.
Yeah. So we left off February 26th. Angela of Death was being released, your first book of 3.
Yep.
And pre-orders were being taken. So walk us through what that was like, what happened, what's going on, and then we can get into book 2.
All right. So that basically from the jump, that was kind of mind blowing because I had a previous book which only sold not nearly as many copies, but I knew all the people that were buying it. But with this one, it just the numbers kept piling up, of the pre-orders and then the sales, and they were still going until this last week where it's at that point where it's doing so well, but every day I'll check Amazon or wherever I can to see how the sales are doing, just because, I'm obsessed with that now. But
yep.
It'll be every now and then there'll be a sale or two, and I'm the beauty of it is I have no idea who's buying them now. So it just could be random Joe off, not off the street, but whatever, random person. I have no idea who they are. And now, when that's happening, you really start to feel like an author. You're like, oh, someone just doesn't even know who I am and they're buying the book. That's great. Maybe word of mouth is traveling. So,
yeah. But
yeah, and then seeing stores Target.com, Target.com, Walmart.com, all the stores, they're picking it up and it's on their website. So if you go to Target.com and type it in, there it is right there, which is just mind blowing because, it's one of those things you work towards this forever, but then you're not used to seeing all that.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah, no, this is me. Yeah, it's not quite the same because it's not all that creative. But I remember the first time that I was walking through O'Hare Airport a couple of years ago, and I looked up and I saw someone wearing one of my shirts. I didn't know who it was, and I'm like, why is that? Where'd that guy get the shirt, right? And it's like, oh my God, there's, the United States is 333 million people, and all you need is for one person to see or hear about something good, and then they buy it on their own, and it's a trickle down effect, right?
They get your merch.
Yeah, which is cool, and
that's pretty big.
You get your book out there, and all of a sudden you have people that, you have a friend that told another friend, and next thing you know, they're buying the book because they want to hear what all the buzz is about, right?
Two small town guys.
Yeah. 2 small town guys that get people that they don't know buying their stuff, which is cool, right?
Yep.
Well, that's cool. So the book sales. So you had pre-book sales. Now you get book sales for 6 months.
Yep.
And now the next installment is it. Now the book's done. It's written. It's queued up to be printed. There's no fine tuning or anything. It's just this was, if we remember correctly, you did one book and it was split into 2, and you just that's how you're doing this. And then the third one you're writing. Yeah, essentially from scratch.
So when they said it'll be, when I first found out about that it was going to be a trilogy from my publisher's post on I think on Facebook or whatnot, and he said the first of a trilogy, and I'm like, ooh, trilogy. You
Yeah.
know, it's like fanboyed myself. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I
I better get going on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then that's the other cool thing is like you're not thinking on that level. Then you're like, ooh, this could be really cool. Especially like I'm a fan of like all like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, all those things that have this great big universe with multiple stories and
Yeah.
like collections and whatnot. And I'm like, oh, this could turn into that. So
Yeah.
I could be that guy that does that. So
You don't seem like the type of person that gets pressure, like feels that, like if it was me, right, I'd be like, oh my God, I wrote this and it's into 2 books and I got to write a 3rd one. I'd feel like this immense pressure. You just have like ear to ear smile and excitement. So it seems like you're obviously up for the challenge, but it's more exciting than worrisome, right?
Oh yeah, because it's a living the dream thing at this point.
Yeah.
But I mean, it also helps that it's not my main, like it's my dream, but it's not my main like
source of
income.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a job I love. So it's one of those things where, if I woke up tomorrow and that's so cliche. If I woke up tomorrow and I wasn't doing this anymore, I'd be just fine. But that's not true. It's my dream. I love writing and creating these stories. So I hope I'm creating them forever. But it's one of those things. Plus, we talked about in the last episode, like last podcast. I don't know.
Yeah, call it whatever you want.
Yeah. So we talked in that how I wrote this for my students. So they're the inspiration.
Yeah.
So as long as I'm working with them, I'm always going to be inspired, and it'll just keep going.
Yeah.
I always tell my boss that they're stuck with me, regardless. If this thing sold millions, you're stuck with me, regardless.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we spent a lot of time, which was great, about your bread, your breadwinning, your W-2, whatever you want to call it, your day job, right? Because you do love it that much, and your kids, that are in the school, and it's a for those that didn't listen to the first episode, what is it considered? What is it called? Is there a word for it? Is it not a detention school? It's
it's a juvenile detention school. I mean, I don't. It's not technically an alternative school. It really doesn't have a name other than it's Department of Youth Services. So they're all the programs are they're detention centers or treatment centers.
And kids got the students got the book.
Oh yeah. So again, I definitely want to mention that. So you guys were very generous. You and Tim Morse, good, my brother-in-law, good friend of yours. He donated a bunch of books to the kids, and my publisher matched you guys, and he's like, oh, this is amazing, let's do that, so he's like, I love that they're doing it, so I want to join in on the fun. So it's great. So we got the books in all their hands. Even the kids who don't read it.
Yeah.
So, and I always wanted to be that, you always hear, oh, this book got me into reading or whatever, something like along that line. And to hear that a certain kid doesn't read, and I know when they don't read because I have them in class all day, and I know they'll tell me even way before this that I'm not a reader when if we're reading aloud in class. So they to hear them say, oh yeah, I finished your book and it'd be like in a week, that boggles my mind. But it's that kind of thing where I hope they read, I hope this starts them reading a bunch of books, not just mine, just like reading in general. Because whenever I say reading for fun, they're just blank stare, which I'm sure I gave the teachers back then when they're like, what do you read for fun? That's not fun to me. Yeah. But, now it is. But.
Yeah. I don't know that I asked you last time. Did you let any of your students read the first copy before it was released?
No.
Yeah.
No.
So you didn't test the waters with them.
No. And it was cool because some of them, and I don't want to say I made a mistake, but I handed it out in class. Mm-hmm. So like telling them, bring it back to your room. But all of a sudden they went right into it.
Yep.
And I didn't, the rest of that class period was just like,
you can't get mad at them for that. Yeah.
Exactly. Them looking at the book. So I'm like, all right. So.
Yeah.
And they like seeing, so I showed them the podcast and they like seeing that. And they're like, hey, you're talking about us. And I said, yeah. So.
Well, I mean, that's, we talk about it. I mean, these kids have gotten in trouble when many of them have been counted out. Right. Mm-hmm. And you count them in and you have a great sense of pride. And I think that's important for them. I'm sure they sense it every day that you're there in class with them, but
I like to think so.
Yeah. But you're also not getting the kids. Some of them, it's not a traditional school where they're starting with you in 10th grade and staying with you through 12th grade. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Which I think you talked about, there was a milestone. You got to attend a graduation this year.
Yeah, so I hadn't been to one in a while. I had been to one at one point, probably years ago now, but this year all the teachers went to where we were fortunate enough to go see our former students graduate. So some of the students were still within DYS, and some were out in the community, but they all came back to graduate. Like the kids who graduated this year all received a diploma, and it's one of those things where you see these kids. And like you said, sometimes they just count each other. They count themselves out. But when you see them getting up there and they have the mortarboard or what? Yeah, I think that's what it's called, mortarboard, and their gown, and then they're accepting their diploma, and it's just that.
Is that what the cap's called?
I think so. Like, I feel like that's what they told us in high school, and then I just went with it.
Yeah.
It always sounds like something you drive, not like. But I'm thinking motorboat, so it's mortarboard.
You didn't put one of those in your head.
Yeah, it's just I would call it graduation cap.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I just
like.
know that Mr. Rivard used to get mad.
Yeah,
and you couldn't put anything on it. We had a student that did, and she took the hat off and threw it in the woods, and so I gave him my hat. So I didn't even wear one for my graduation. I was like, somebody saw my graduation picture. They're like, "Why don't you have a cap on?" I'm like, I really don't want to wear it. So this kid had his thrown. I gave him mine. So
chivalry's not dead.
Huh?
Just say chivalry isn't dead.
Yeah, no. So I didn't want to wear the cap is what probably it was back then. But I didn't know that there was an actual word for it, just called the cap.
But yeah, no.
ADD just kicked in. My bad.
They always say, like they were saying, and they even said it that day, I think, and now you take your tassel and you're over the other side of the mortarboard, and I'm like, mortarboard. I could never, I'm still hearing that. I'm like, mortarboard. That's a crazy name.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look that up. I got one graduating next year, so I'm going to have to talk to him about his mortarboard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, make sure it fits. Make sure your mortarboard fits.
So they graduate traditional school, and then they come to another graduation at the DYS.
Some of them do, and some who are still, if they're still with DYS, like we get notification. Like I've had a few students over the years that while they were with us got notification from their school district that they graduated, and then you get to see it in real time right there you'll tell them during the school day, and their eyes just like, what? And then the other guys are like, hey, and they clap for each other, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of the kids couldn't come to the graduation to see their friends graduate, but it is what it is. You can only do so much. Yeah. But for security and safety purposes, you only do so much. But it was great seeing that, and I saw one young man who I never even had him as a student, but I saw him in the lobby of the place, and he had I knew he was graduating. He had his gown on and his mortarboard. Yeah. And so I said, congratulations. That's, tremendous accomplishment. And he said, he immediately, you'd think there was a camera on him. He immediately gave credit to everyone who helped him along the way. Like, he did not take credit for it at all. And I said, well, all right, you should give yourself credit though as well. But it's, it's very mature and of you to acknowledge the people that helped you get there. But also, be proud.
Well, to do it at an early age and be going through, challenges and things like that. It took me 26 years. I don't know if I've told you this. I found out Miss Schleicher was retiring in 2020.
All right.
And for whatever reason, 2020 was COVID, so we had a bunch of stuff in the basement, and my parents had moved out. We bought their house, they moved, but some of the stuff stayed, and some of my school stuff was in a box. And one of the things was a science test that had a grade of 68, and I opened up the test results of what I was, because I was 68 was a pretty high score for me. And the last question, I had a picture, and it was a picture of me, like cartoon, and it just said, I love chemistry, and in the background was like a safety shower, and I think it was Todd Hedrick. Nice. that I put, that was laying down like under the safety shower saying I'm burning. Like those are the types of answers that I wrote, and I found out she was retiring. I sent her a card with 68 on the outside cover. It was custom made on the inside was the answer, was the answer, and then a thank you, sincere thank you, to her and what she did. And like, I probably would have been in high school for 10 years if it wasn't for, teachers like her and Duncan Oliver, our principal, and some others that made a difference. And that good on him to catch that, so quick, and maybe that's just an awareness.
And he knew that I didn't have him. He never had me for a teacher, so I was a random dude.
Well, and it didn't matter, and it didn't matter if he told you, or didn't tell you. It was
right.
It was important to him.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's really cool. So
it was a great experience. Like I said, it had been years since I'd been to one, and this time like all the teachers got to go to it, and it's great because it also had that almost like public school feel, because I feel like when we graduated, like all of our teachers were there.
Yeah, it used to be. I mean, I don't know what it's like now, but yeah, it was the community, right?
Yeah.
For us, growing up, it was like you never wanted to have the graduation in the high school because it was limited, and it was at Frothingham Park, and it was like they loaded there was no checking of like if you were a parent, guardian, or something. It was just like whoever wanted to come, and you had, a large part of the community was there, and a lot of your teachers were involved in programs and clubs and all of that stuff. I mean, I never even realized it until I got back to working in schools with one of my companies, and now I go around. I just spoke at the school district in Virginia. I spoke to the transportation department in Henrico, Virginia. It's 500 school bus routes. I mean,
wow.
It's 51,000 kids. And then I was in Dayton, Ohio for a collaborative. They do all of the special needs support for all the schools in the area. Yeah, it was pretty wild. Great experience. Next week I'm going to Illinois, Ohio. I got a couple of Massachusetts, and you kind of, when you start seeing that stuff all over again from a different lens as an adult, you're like, oh, wait a second, you didn't get paid to come to graduation. You didn't get paid to be a part of this after school club. You didn't get paid. You just did it because you liked your job and what you did, and you liked kids and making a difference. Oh, that's different look on things, right?
Yeah.
So that's cool. So your kids haven't gotten to look at the second book then? No,
I showed them the cover. So the cover, you can see it on, like, because the pre-order's up for the ebook version. So I showed them the cover on Amazon, see what it looks like, and they're like, "Oh, that's fire!" It's one of those things. So like Susan Roddy, she and Josh Daughtry, they came together to design the cover. Like, they came up with the idea of the cover, and then she's the artist. She implemented it, and it's just, every time it blows the kids. It blows me away too, but it blew them away. They were like, "That is fire!"
Fire's a big word.
Yeah. So that was one of the words. So their reviews, like, their initial reviews, they weren't like lengthy reviews of the book, like of book one, but I got "It's fire" from a couple of kids. I got "It's tough," which one kid, he gave me the look, he's like, "It's tough."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "That good?" And he goes, "It's good."
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right. And I'm like, it's not corny at all.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Clearly, I was never in a gang.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's not corny at all. And he goes, "No." And I go, "I didn't force it with the slang." And he goes, there's always that. He goes, "Not as bad." And he goes, "You didn't really, some of it's outdated." And I'm like, "Well, I wrote it 10 years ago, So it's one of those things. But the slang, like anywhere else, changes every year probably. So, but yeah, I got that. I got "It's fire," "It's tough." When one kid just said, "It's good."
Yeah.
One kid, and then the best one is, my favorite is one kid goes, "Finish your book," and I'm like, "Oh, great!" I knew it was one of the kids that didn't, like, he was fairly new, so he goes, I go, "How was it?" He goes, "It's all right," and I'm like, "I'll take it." And he went to he went out of the room to go to the bathroom or something, and then one of his classmates said, he goes, "He doesn't read at all, so take the all right." And I'm like, "Oh no, I already took it," but I'm like, I go, "But that makes me actually feel better now that you said he doesn't read at all."
Yeah, it's got to be hard. Well, I guess, I mean, I don't think I asked this the first go around, but what's it like being close to 50? You're not 50 yet, right?
No.
Yeah.
6 months.
Yeah.
Like that.
But I mean, what's it like to because you just made a good point. Like, slang changes every year, and what kids are into, and this is a young adult. What is it classified as? I get it wrong.
Young adult fantasy.
Yeah.
So
it's got to be pretty cool to be trying to think like, you know, your audience as far as a young adult, and I think that it's not too far gone that we don't remember what childhood and you know, teenage, being a teenager or anything, but a lot changes, right? And a lot evolves.
That's also one of the benefits of being a teacher, especially in the high school grade. It's like, I don't necessarily, you know, it's one of those things. I get older and less cool.
Yep.
But they keep that same like energy the whole way through, and I pick up the slang and the different, like, you know, it's so like sometimes I feel like I'm dropped. It's like a Back to the Future movie when I'm like, oh, what is, like, even some technology. They're like, yeah. I'm like, what is that? And they're like, you're so old. Like it's never like they'll never explain to me what it is. It's just like, you're so old.
Yeah, you'll never understand.
Yeah, you couldn't possibly.
Yeah, no, but I mean, what got you to set out to, like, you could write about anything? Why did you pick that audience? Was it because of teaching? Is it because of seeing a niche of sorts that was like something? Was it a childhood, you know, dream? What got you there?
Got me into writing, or got me into writing?
Writing for that persona, that group of people. Like for me, you know, my book I'm writing, it's meant for anybody, but realistically, it's going to be people that are, you know, in my age bracket, right? Yeah. It's the language is going to be in that age bracket. The life experiences are probably going to be relatable to it, because a lot of stuff that I talk about was before the internet was big and everything else. So, but you're older, writing for a younger audience and trying to attract that audience and being able to test and everything. So basically, again,
it's one of those things where you're lucky if you get a student that like really likes reading. So if I get like one or two in my classroom at a time, like that they enjoy reading, like really enjoy it, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And then, there was one group we had one year, about 10 years ago when I first started writing it, that they just loved like fantasy books. They'd be reading whatever they found on that shelf in there, even if it was like from the 80s. They'd be reading it just because they liked that genre. But one kid one day, I said, "Oh, you guys really like this stuff? I like fantasy stuff." And they said, "Yeah, we get into it a little bit." And then one kid said, "Well, we don't really relate to the protagonists or the heroes, because basically like Harry Potter, Katniss from the Hunger Games, like." A lot of the times it not even like broken down to like race or culture, but like their upbringing. Like they don't, it's not kids from like their environment that they grew up in, like gang where gangs are and whatnot. So they're like, we can't really relate to the heroes, but we like the book, you know, we like the stories anyways. And so I'm like, all right, well, and in my mind at the time, I wrote young adult stuff, but it wasn't fantasy, because my imagination just didn't work that way. It was like, I was strong on dialogue and like coming of age stories and whatnot. And so I had a dream that ended up being chapter 2 of book 1, where, you know, this random Latina girl comes in and she turns out to be the angel of death. She kisses this old guy on the forehead and he's dead. And it's in the nursing home. And I'm like, oh, I might have just got my idea for the book that they could read someday. And so that was where it was born, and so I wrote it from that point on. And so that was a happy accident, writing like fantasy. I'm a young adult. I was already writing that, but like the fantasy thing was never on the radar for me until they said that. Yeah. So,
man, you're the second podcast today that the guest, right, Adam? Didn't a happy accident happen this morning?
Yeah.
With Ed? Yeah. Wow, it's quite a coincidence, and they don't know each other. And he was in California when he said it. So, wow, happy accident is the word of the day. So you mean you wrote the book? You're writing these books in essence for your kids. And I mean, we know that. I know that that's the premise and the promise. But you know, it's always interesting. You know, I talked to a number of people that are authors of different books, different genres, different everything, and you know, I'm always interested to hear where that interest lies, and if it's really there, what it is, right? What's your why, right? Because everybody says they know what their why is, but most people probably, when they don't scratch much past the surface, right?
Yeah.
I want to write a book. I want to write a book. I want to share stories. I want to do this. Well, why? You know.
Right.
So.
But yeah, mine's pretty specific. Yeah. Like oddly, like, you know, so oddly specific that it's just the way it happened.
Yeah. Yeah. you dedicate this to your students at all?
Book 2 is dedicated to all the students I've had and all the students I haven't met yet.
That's pretty cool.
Thank you.
That's pretty cool. I think that'll...
Book 1 was to my wife and kids. I had to start with them.
It's probably a good place to start.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the ones that probably go through your sleepless nights of writing or waking up with chapter 2 in your head and figuring out that you had to... You got a pad of paper on your nightstand. You wake up in the middle of the night with your thoughts and you write it down. And
exactly. And then my wife's like, you can just put it into your phone. And I'm like, but I just, my notebook. I write. I'm always writing. So. Yeah.
Do you get any cool points added with your kids?
So they haven't read this one yet, which they're like I was. Like, it's one of those, they're 100% like I was when I was their age, where reading is not fun yet. Even if Dad writes a book, reading is not fun yet. Like, if my dad wrote a book, I don't know that back then I would have read it. Yeah. But who knows? I used to like books like Treasure Island and stuff. So who knows? If he wrote something like that, probably I would have read it. But the funny thing is, so the book that I wrote prior to this one, it was a middle grade horror book, like the Goosebumps style book. Yeah. And so my son always put it in his bag for like reading to have it, have at school after tests and whatnot. But never, he admitted he never read it. But then like he'll be grabbing like Goosebumps and throwing them in there. And when like, I finished this Goosebumps, can I get another one? And I'm like, dude, like that's the enemy. Yeah. I mean, not the enemy, but I'm like, like my students will say, that's the ops. Like R.L. Stein, your dad just wrote one, right? But he's like, I'll read that at some point. But they raise a good point though. There's a lot of pressure. Like there's a lot of pressure reading something that a family member, especially like your husband or your dad wrote. Right. Because like they don't want, because they know that I'll be like, what do you think? What do you think? Yeah. After every chapter. But so there's a lot of pressure. Yeah. I totally get that.
Yeah, so you didn't sneak into the school and add your book to the summer school reading list?
No, I would. That's the dream. But like I gave each of my kids a copy of the book to bring to their teacher, their English teacher. So it went right on the bookshelf, and I'm like, yes. Yeah. And then I told my son, I said, if you don't, like, even if you don't read the book or whatever, just kind of have it on your desk. So the kid next to you is like, oh, what's that? Yeah. Boom. I'm like,
they still have summer school reading?
Yes. Yeah. Although it's like, they don't really, according to my kid, my son anyways, they don't ask you specific questions about it anymore. So it's.
Yeah. The system is, I don't read. I can come up with any reason, but it's going to be an excuse at the end of the day. I listen to a ton of books. Yeah. I'm listening, I'm consuming through audio because I'm traveling, a ton, and I guess I don't find the time. I was never a big reader anyway. But I love consuming information and learning things. Just do it differently. Now my fiance is like, she reads every night and 25 to 50 pages minimum every night. And she just digs right into the books. But, summer reading, I was always like the last 2 days before summer was over, and I'm reading and I'm getting Cliff's notes and everything else. But today, realistically, like summer reading was to build, the idea that you read, like that you were a comprehensive reader. Unfortunately, I was at a school, I worked with a school recently that, the percentage of third grade, I think it was third grade students that could read comprehensive reading was like 40%. Like, so, it's meant to get people to do work outside of school during their break. It was also to make parents work a little bit too, I think.
Right. Oh yeah. I read their book while they were reading it also. It's like they'll read it during the day, I'm reading it at night. And then we'll have like, I'm like, all right, let's have a book talk about it. Let's like, so you're prepared, and they're like, no, let's not.
The Cady House Book Club.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Never took off. Like none of them, neither my son nor my daughter wanted to do it. They're like, no, we'll just, how about you just tell me what happened? And I'm like, did you read it? Yeah. It's like, but that, even I did that, that was me when I was a kid, and even into my 20s. So when I went when I took the teacher's test to be an English teacher, the final question, one of the essay question had something to do with a book where man versus nature really, it was something to do with that. And so it's like, I knew who wrote the book Jaws.
Yeah.
I didn't read the book Jaws, but I knew the guy's name was Peter Benchley. So I'm like, I'm just going to throw caution to the wind that it's exactly like the movie.
Yeah.
And then I wrote the essay based on the movie, and I guess it was pretty close to it was pretty close to the book, because I did pretty well. I scored pretty well in the essay. I'm like, I'd like to thank Steven Spielberg for being accurate to the book. But that's one of those things where I get when kids don't want to read for fun, because that was not me, and I carried it into my 20s. Now I do. Now I like reading for fun, but I'll read like 3 books at a time, which drives my wife nuts.
Do you really?
Yeah, because I
think Amy does that too.
Yeah.
She's got she's just got books upon books. Yeah.
Like I'll start a book, and then I'm like, ooh, that's a cool. It's almost like you grab my attention with another book, like a new shiny object. I'm like, ooh, that book looks cool. Well, but I didn't finish that book. But at one point there'll be like 2 or 3 books right there on my nightstand, and I'm like, yep, I'll read that. And she's like, how are you doing this?
Now, are you reading anything? Like, do you have like specific types of books that you like to read? Or you just...
So now that I write the fantasy stuff, I try to read more of the fantasy stuff. So for example, there's on someone's Facebook post one time, someone said, oh yeah, Angel of Death reminds me of, there was a book called On a Pale Horse by Piers Anthony. Like, it was like from the 80s. And I'm like, I never even heard of that. And then there was another book that they mentioned from Dean Koontz. And so I was like, both of those, but I was on both of those. I was like, ooh, cool. So you think that book reminds you of a certain book that, and I had heard of Dean Koontz. I just never read any of his stuff. But my wife and I went to this book drive or whatever, however you phrase it, like a book sale at the Brockton Animal Shelter one time, and literally on the shelves and those, and random amongst the books was that On a Pale Horse by Piers Anthony and the other one by Dean Koontz. I'm like, what are the odds?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I have to get these. Yeah. So I started reading the On a Pale Horse one, and I see I can see the similarities, but so it's usually something like that. I'm doing Lord of the Rings this summer with my students, and it's funny, like we'll read like a bunch of pages from Tolkien, and it's all like him describing them going down a mountain for like 4 pages. And my students like, one of my students, he goes, you're better than this guy. And I'm like, well, hey, that's Tolkien. We don't talk about Tolkien like that, but it's like, but thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. He just took a long time to go down the hill.
Yeah. For me, it's like 1 paragraph.
Yeah. I mean, that's again, that's today. You have to adjust today's writing to today's people.
Right.
Everybody is. I was having. First of all, it's 2 stories. The first one was Mark and I were talking about some stuff for my book, and I was telling a story, and he's just looking at me like, oh my God, and I'm like, oh, this is like a unique story, but the reality is, everything's probably been thought of at this point, right? Every idea, everything, every situation, every scenario. Like someone could say, oh, you took this from this book in 1912. There's millions and millions and millions of books. There's millions and millions and millions of TikTok videos and Instagrams and all the stuff that's out there. Like it's really hard to come up with. Like I tell people all the time, like my work there is no lightning in a bottle. I don't know where I got some of this stuff, but I'm willing to bet that if somebody said, this person said this in 1962, well before I was born, it's a good possibility that it was said. There was...
people have been around forever.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's funny. And I look it up. I try to find, like, I just did this podcast with Joe DeCina, who's the CEO and founder of Spartan. We recorded it last week. And he asked me some question about, or I said something about, kind of Be Awesome's mission is being better people by being better to people. Very simple, stupid saying, like, I don't know. And so I searched the internet far and wide. I can't find anybody that used that tagline. If they did, nobody's taking credit for it. So I'm like, I'm taking credit for it until somebody tells me otherwise. But I mean, that's a rarity, right? If you say something like, happy accident. Happy accident. I haven't heard that before. I don't know ever. And I heard it twice in one day. So it's just kind of one of those interesting things. I would be personally, I would be fearful, like reading what I write, because I would feel like I would rub some of that stuff off, and unintentionally, like, oh, that's a good idea. And then, all of a sudden it's somebody else's. I wanted to try to make it seem, that's got to be hard too, right?
But it's one of those things where, it's just natural for it to happen. Like it happens in music all the time. It happens in painting, every medium it happens in.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things. And yeah, no, like.
Are authors competitive? Like, have you been to like a book show or like are there such things? Like,
I'm sure there are. I don't see a lot of it just because I see a lot of I see a lot of authors like supporting and lifting up one another, like because it's one of those things, and I especially saw that when I got into like the independent like the horror, the smaller like the horror market and stuff. Like they all kind of, it's one of those things where they support each other like crazy. Like it's not even one of those things though. Oh well, he knows so and so. That's the only reason he's. It's one of those things where
genuine care.
Yeah, and for example, there was one time where I don't know what, some tragedy befell one of the horror authors. Like he didn't die, but someone, I can't remember if it was his wife. Someone had, anyways. And in any case, and they had started all these different authors who weren't even like from the same publisher as he was. Like they started like a GoFundMe for the guy, and like just trying to. And it's one of those things where that's so different from trying to outdo the next guy, but it's one of those things. I'm sure there is plenty of like, I'm a competition, everything's competition, but that's just life in general. People turn a lot of things into competitions.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Be Awesome podcast. If you are enjoying our episodes, please give us a 5-star rating review on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Spotify, Podbean, Apple Podcasts. Those ratings and reviews do make a difference in helping us get more exposure, more listeners, as well as giving people an insight and understanding as to what they could expect when they listen to our episodes. Thanks again, and you are awesome. My son, my teenage son wanted, 2021, I guess, wanted to go to Comic-Con. And those people, they get into it. There was 100,000 people at the Providence Civic Center.
Wow.
And they take over the whole thing, the Civic Center, the Conference Center, everything else. So the following year, tickets, I think it was $500 or $600 for the whole weekend pass thing and all that. And I was like, you get a booth for $1,000. And I was like, I'll get a booth. I'll sell t-shirts and sit there all weekend and hang out. And my son he's got a home base he can come back to and help out and work, to earn his ticket.
That's
if you
perfect.
will. And, and I was there and I just watched, like, there's a competitive spirit when it comes to, DC versus Marvel and all. And I'm so far removed. Like, I watch all the movies and all that stuff, but I don't read the comic books or anything, just to keep my cool status with my kids. But you listen to the competitive spirit of some of that stuff. I'm like, oh my God, like this is.
Oh yeah, it's like dog eat dog world. Oh, they're trying to. We're right. No, you're right. No,
DC's the best. No, Marvel's the best. No, I'm like, I don't even know the difference. Which one's which? Like, one's Superman and Batman, and the other one's the other people.
Basically, even my students, like, they'll debate that, dude. They're like, oh, DC's trash, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. And then they're like, John, and then the Marvel kids will be like, no, you're fine, John. Don't side with DC. And I'm like, look, guys,
Yeah, it's funny. I went to the Metallica show. I took my teenager to that 2 weeks ago. I went to Metallica 2 weeks ago, and then I went to NKOTB this past weekend.
My wife went to that.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
Yeah, she had a good time?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, she's been, forever.
Was she wearing neon clothes? There was a lot of neon there.
I saw that, like, from the videos, but no, she just, she dressed like she normally does, but she was all into it because she's, I told her, I said, it's kind of remarkable. Like, I literally remember going into the Canton Mall and seeing their first album come up. So it's one of those things, and it always seems like boy bands don't have that kind of shelf space. Like they don't last that long, but like these guys are doing it like, what, 40, 50 years?
30. So Hangin' Tough came out in 1988. So that's 36 years. Yeah. And the first album which I can't remember what it was called, was out in, I think, 85 or 86. So it's almost 40 years.
Yeah. So, and it's one of those things I told her, I said, usually when you hear about groups like that are lasting that long, it's like rock and roll groups, just because someone is always going to want to see Aerosmith or something. You know, it's like one of those things, but like like boy bands never seem to last that long, but sure enough, like they're selling out big places still.
Yeah. No, I definitely fail in a lot of aspects of things. And last summer I was traveling nonstop, and before I knew it, it was the end of the summer and we hadn't done anything, like literally anything. And we got away for a couple of days to New Hampshire. So this year, booked a place for a week and wanted to do, something special for everybody in the house, at least one thing. I mean, working like I do and traveling, I did 22,000 miles and 17 flights in 19 days. So it was so I mean, I was Alaska, New Mexico, Texas twice. It was just it was crazy. And so took my son to Metallica, which is what he wanted to do. Man, Pantera was playing too. Those guys still scream into the microphone like nothing I've ever seen. And it was just at dinner one night, and I just looked at Amy and was like, "You want to go to NKOTB?" She's like, "What?" I'm like, "You want to go to NKTOB? We got date night. We haven't had a date night in like 8 months. Like we haven't, just the two of us, gone out anywhere." And she's like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to go." She went once in TD Bank North, and I'm like, "Am I gonna be the only guy there? Like this is this like just a quick question? Like, is this gonna be?" And I'll tell you what, I don't remember. So it was Paul Abdul, DJ Jazzy Jeff, and NKOTB. And I don't remember who, but one of the people in one of the bands was like, "And let's give a shout out for all the husbands that are in the audience." I'm gonna tell you right now, from a show standpoint, no line into the men's room. Although there were women that were going into the men's room because their line was so long. Yeah. No line to get a beer, and the crowd was amazing. Like the show was phenomenal. Like as far as they were like 3 songs in, and there was a standing ovation that shook the Xfinity Center for like 3 minutes before Donnie Wahlberg could talk for a minute. Wow. And then the place just erupted.
Well, there you go.
To have 36 years of fanatic following like that. And it was like, you walked right back into 1990. It was like all these people our age wearing neon colors and crimped hair and all this stuff. I'm looking around, I'm like, what? And we're just dressed like we're dressed like we're heading to Big Y to go get some groceries. Like we were just stopping by to see what was going on. Like people got into it.
Time machine, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But I looked at the set list from that concert. I said to my wife, I said, they played Paradise City, and she goes, "Yep," and I'm like, Guns N' Roses Paradise City, and she goes, "Yep," and I'm like, they have no right. Yeah. But I was like, it was one of those things I get like Wicked Pretend. I'm like, they have no right. Yeah. But
they played well.
Yeah. And she said, that she goes, surprisingly, they did a good job with it. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, no, so they played Please Don't Go Girl. And they played like a lot of new stuff. I didn't realize that some of the new stuff that I hear on the radio is actually them.
Oh wow.
So they got like a whole new album, I guess. And so they played a bunch of the old stuff. And I think it was Please Don't Go Girl. And Amy looked at me and she's like, "All right, we can go now if you want." And it was just because Xfinity Center is a disaster to get out of. Yeah. Like if you stay till the end, it's 20,000 people in that parking lot. It's awful.
It's terrible.
It's like, "We can go now if you want and beat the crowd." And so I'm like, "Yeah, all right, sure, fair enough." We were there from 6 o'clock. I think we left at 10 or 10:30 or something like that.
Yeah, we went to a concert there not too long ago. The Outlaw Tour was Robert Plant and Alison Krauss and Bob Dylan, and they were supposed to be Willie Nelson, but Willie Nelson's been sick, so he's like 91, so he was sick, so it was his son that went on for him at the end. So his son played Willie's set, which Willie's was the last set. So I'm like, after Bob Dylan, Robert Plant and Bob Dylan, after Bob Dylan, I'm like, we can go. Yeah. I'm like, I'm not gonna sit in that traffic to listen to Willie Nelson's son. Oh yeah. I'm like, I'm sure he's talented. Clearly, he must be talented. He's he's out there doing it, but I'm like, he's not Willie. Oh yeah, no. So we got out. We walked out to the car. I mean, it was perfect time. My truck doesn't fit well in any parking lots or anything, so I was like, we're not gonna be able to back out because they had a car backed in. It was a car in front of us, but we came out. Car in front of us was already gone. We pulled out, and they were playing Sweet Caroline, which I think was probably towards the end, and we just booted right out of there, which was fantastic because
Yeah, traffic's awful. Yeah, it's funny. You talk about Willie Nelson's son. I was at an event in Atlantic City, and I'm like, that kind of looks and sounds like Darius Rucker. And it was like a private event, and he's up there singing on stage, and they're like, yeah, that's Darius Rucker, his cousin.
Cousin.
And it was, but he was an amazing musician.
The banner says that, doesn't even say his name.
Yeah.
Darius Rucker's cousin.
Yeah. I don't even know what his, and I met him. I got to talk to him for a little bit, and it was Darius Rucker's cousin.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was my claim to fame. We trailed off on an NKOTB talk. My ADHD kicked in.
I know, and I was just gonna carry it further. So did you go the night of Metallica when they played Sweet Caroline too? Because they did cover it, from what I understand, on one of those two nights.
No, I think they did Sunday night.
That would have been wild if you saw two bands singing Sweet Caroline who are not Neil Diamond.
Yeah, and a week.
Yeah,
and both childhood bands. I can't get over, and this kind of goes with a little bit along the lines of writing your books and things. It's amazing to see, like, all the people that were headbanging that were bald because they were old and not because they shaved their head at Metallica. Like, you could envision them with long hair in the 90s. Like I listen to these people like, I've come to 27 concerts. Like, it was the first time I had ever gone. And but these guys, there was a fanatical following. As a matter of fact, James Hetfield at one point said, hey, if you've been here, if this is your first time, say something. And it was, you heard some voices, but they're like, he says, if you've been here 3, 4, 5, or 100 times, and the place just shook. That fanatical following is something that is to be cherished, and to just say, wow, like, you could tell these two performers, the two performances that I went to, it was like, they're doing what they love and what they've always loved, and they give it back. Like, the gratitude to their fans was amazing. So I love the fact that you're dedicating your second book to your students that you've had and the ones that you haven't had yet. That's
Thanks.
A pretty awesome decision, and something that your book will be in that school for hopefully many years to come.
After me.
After you. And those kids that are in there, I mean, you're in essence providing some level of hope for kids that you may not ever meet, right? And it's just a dedication to them, which is pretty darn cool.
Thank you, and thank you for not looking up in my head when you said bald guys are Metallica.
Yeah.
Anytime I'm talking to someone and they say, like, the word bald, they're like, their eyes go right up.
Yeah, you didn't have much hair on your head to begin with,
right?
So I mean, that's like, I've known you since we were in like the 4th grade, and you were always short hair, not a lot of hair. So I think that was just a natural. It was a natural
transition.
It was a natural transition that you adopted, and I think I'm not too far off myself. I often think about just going for it and just shaving it and see what happens.
If I lose a word, this is breaking news. If I lose a word search tomorrow to one of my students, I have to grow my hair long.
Really?
Well, that's why I'm growing the beard longer now. So I'll do, like, I always do this word search challenge with them, where I have this book that has Edgar Allan Poe, like, poems, but then it has a word search on the other side with bold lettering.
Yeah.
And so if I lose the word search, like, I lost the word search, so I have to grow a long beard and be Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And so the new bet that the kid made today is if I lose tomorrow, I got to grow my hair wicked long.
So here's what I'm praying for, that you lose, because I want to see that.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, did I tell you the Santa Claus story? Because if you have to dress up like Santa Claus, I've got it. So I don't know if you know this, but one of my friends is the only person legally named Santa Claus in North Pole, Alaska.
I did not know that.
Okay, so he's episode 3. So the whole reason why I have guests on the podcast was I did my first 2 episodes, which I don't recommend any listener view those 2 episodes. They're terrible. It's just me under my peach tree talking into a microphone on a TV dinner tray. And I went in on a name. He's like, "What's the matter?" I'm like, "I'm awful. Like, this is just our son was 8 months old, so I had to go someplace peaceful and quiet, which was out in the yard." And I'm like, "I'm terrible. Like, I'm going to be boring real fast." She's like, "Well, you need to get guests and have people on the podcast with you." So it's a great idea. So my brain's a mysterious place, and somewhere I was like, I'm going to Alaska in a couple weeks to Fairbanks. And I remember there was a guy that legally changed his name to Santa Claus and lives in North Pole, Alaska, and is a city councilor. I'm going to make him my friend and have him on the podcast. He's got to have a story. Like, you don't just do that to do that. And so I called City Hall, the North Pole City Hall. I'm like, hey, is Santa Claus there? And like, no, sorry. And I said, oh, he must be in the toy shop with the elves getting ready for Christmas. The crickets. I'm like, this is my best material.
Right.
It's my one chance to pull this. And that's what I got. And they're like, no, you can send an email to Santa Claus at northpole.ak.us. And so I sent him an email. I chased after him, and he's legit what you would think Santa Claus would look like. It was, and he was like, no, not doing it. And finally I was like, all right, so I'll see you on July, whatever it is, in City Hall chambers, and we'll record the podcast and everything will be great. And he's like, he was so reluctant to do it, but he ended up doing it. And found out that he's a Christian monk, and he chose a life of minimalism, and he's advocating for kids in dire straits around the world. Like, he looks like legit Santa Claus, right? And so yeah, it looks like a mask. It's so so he and I did the podcast. It was amazing. It was a wild experience. And we've stayed friends. We've raised money for programs for kids in homeless and foster care, and done a whole bunch of really cool initiatives that started with my relationship with Santa Claus. So this past Christmas, he called me and he's like, "Hey Josh, when you come in July," because I was just there last month. Yeah. "When you come in July, I want you to bring an extra suitcase." I'm like, "What? Well, this guy's got a life of minimalism. What do I bring an extra suitcase for? What's he going to give me?" Like, he doesn't have a lot, right? He chooses not to have a lot. And I said, "All right, yeah, sure. How big a suitcase?" Because I'm trying to feel him out. He says, "Well, I'm 77 years old. I've lost 100 pounds in the last year. And what I want to give you is, I want to give you my Santa Claus suit." Wow. And so I have, check it out. You have a suit. You have a Santa Claus suit from Santa Claus. I have the only Santa Claus suit that was owned by the only person legally named Santa Claus in North Pole, Alaska. Wow. So yeah. I have been, that was me all dressed up. I went to the opening reception of the event wearing it. Huge honor. There's not even words I can put into the emotion that was. But if you have to wear the Santa suit, I will. Under tight security watch, I'll dress up like an elf or something. But if you need a Santa suit, I've got the Santa suit. Yeah, I lost a bet, so yeah. Well, I want to see you lose the other one and have to grow your hair. I'm gonna be. Needless to say, I'm gonna be like practicing word searches tonight. Because I told him it gets crazy when I go in cold. Just I want to see you lose this. Yeah, I want to see you lose this. Well, that's the thing. Like his the other kid. So it was, and this is, and not to take away from his word search skills, but I had like 2 words left, and he had like 5 words left because they were always keeping tabs on how many words were left, and so his classmates were literally rooting him on. Yeah, and I'm like, as they should. In my mind, I'm like, "John, you're the biggest jerk in the world if you just demolish a kid right now and like find your last 2 words." And so I'm like, "Oh, where could this be?" Yeah. And I'm even saying stuff like that, but they're not picking up on my sarcasm. They were all just focused on, they're all like hunched over him as he's looking for words. Yeah. But they're not telling him where the words are because, they don't want me to say he was cheating. So they're like hunched over him, and he's like, and then like, they're like, it's one of those things, and they're like, and then like, it wasn't even him that held it up. It was like, once he was done, another kid held it up, and he's like, and I'm like, "Oh, he won." Well, so I want to see this long-haired John Cady. Yeah, my mother wants to see me with a little more hair too. So yeah, I mean, she'll be rooting for the kid tomorrow. I'm rooting for the kid. I'm gonna be honest with you. I hope you lose. I hope that you lose. I hope that the kid beats you badly. He destroyed me today. Yeah, well, that's I say I'm putting all the good vibes his way. And he always waits until he won't find a word until like he's like a champion. He's true heart of it. I always tell him, get the heart of a champion. He won't cross out a word till he sees that I'm crossing out a word. Yeah, because he doesn't want anything, like he doesn't want to start before me. He wants it all the way even. Well. So, here's to hoping you lose. Thank you. So now, third book doesn't have a release date because you're writing it. They're shooting for the same date that the first one was. So that's like March 25th. So they're shooting for that of this upcoming year. So 1 year you're going to release 3 books. That's kind of That's a lot.
It is. But the other two were already, like I said, the other two were already written.
Yeah.
And this one, I'm in the home stretch now on it, so it'll definitely be done.
Yeah.
In a timely fashion. So it's one of those things where the second I saw a trilogy, I'm like, ooh, and I went home all excited, not trying to like crunch time and get it done.
Yeah.
I was just like, ooh, I'm all excited. Like this thing's gonna be bigger than I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah.
Or at least longer. The story is gonna be longer than I thought it would be.
Yeah. So we're coming up on time. This podcast, while we're recording it in August, and so this is going to be released with the assumption it's going to be released September 1st, 2nd, and so by that point in time, people are going to be able to pre-order for a release of September 10th. Where are they going to be able to pre-order the book? How do they get a hold of you? How do they follow along with all of the progress of John Cady and his life as a teacher and book writer?
So the best place to follow along, at least in my writing journey and for these books, is at the publisher's website. So that's watertowerhill.com. And then it's also going to be available on Amazon and basically anywhere books are sold, like Target.com, Walmart.com, BarnesandNoble.com. But you get the most, and you get to see learn the most about me at the publisher website. So watertowerhill.com.
Okay. And it's Angela of Death with an A at the end.
Yep.
So it's
and this is Angela of Death, Book 2, Iron Sharpens Iron.
Okay. And it's releasing on September 10th. And get out, pre-order, buy it, tell your friends, write reviews and ratings, and let John know what you think, and help a local Easton guy get more books sold and in the hands of many young adults, and most importantly, get them back to your. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing that we did last go around. We'll donate. I don't know what we did, 10 or 20 books. I know we did 10 at first. I think we did more. I think I did 20 for your kids. So we're not even going to care about the ratings and reviews, because we don't necessarily, that the ratings and reviews are irrelevant when the kids. So what we'll do is we'll get it. We'll do a 10 books to start. And if you need more, we'll get more for your kids for the release date. So we're going to pre-order 10. And I challenge anybody else out there that wants to do this. I think that there's no shortage of number of books that the school can use to give John and his students an opportunity. John an opportunity to share with his students who he wrote these books for, an opportunity to read the book and tell them that it's fire or that it's tough. Yeah. So this is good, man. Always pleasure to see you. I mean, it's hard to believe. John and I have known each other legitimately were you in Mr. Hill's class?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Mr. Hill
volleyball championship.
Yeah, no, I mean it was two of the shortest guys in the school, right?
Yeah.
I can date back to at least 6th grade, middle school, in the gymnatorium, which we have 4 of the gymnatorium seats.
Oh, really?
At our house, yeah, we got them when the YMCA auctioned them off before they turned our middle school, which is a historic building, into condominiums. But John and I go back to that's probably 86, 85.
Yeah, 80s. Yeah, I think 86, because it was the same year I had hemolytic uremic syndrome that year. So I don't know if you recall, like it was at the end of the year, last 2 months I missed school because I was in the hospital. So
I don't know that I remember that.
It was a kidney infection, but that's like the official term's a little longer.
So you missed the paper airplane contest.
Yeah, it was.
You would have had that. You would have had that done. You would have won that, no problem.
I went in the hospital right after you and right after your mom chaperoned us in the North End trip.
Oh God, I forgot about that. Trinity Church in North End. Yeah.
Yep.
I forgot about that though. I think that was her one and only time that she ever chaperoned any event. She's like, I can't do this. You're pain in the neck.
She had you and me in our group, so it couldn't have been easy.
Oh no, anything but. So. But John and I have known each other, as you can tell, we're dating ourselves, but at least close to 40 years. And this book and the release, and that your Timmy Morse's your brother-in-law, my neighbor and insurance agent and friend, has gotten us back. We've talked more in the last 6 months than I think we have in the last 20 years, which is good, because and we picked up where we never left off. So it's good stuff. So
another reason why I can't wait to read your book is because all the and just the random texts I get from you. I'm like, I'm sitting next to this guy in the airport, and he's got like 3 arms. And I'm like, how's this happening? Like, you're the only one that knows these people.
My stories are there's every place I go, it seems like there's a new story. So this is great. We'll have you on for book 3. Can't wait to hear about the excitement and. Great.
I might have much longer hair by then.
Yeah, that's what I'm counting on. Yeah, if you get when you get long hair before you cut it, we're going to have you back on. So
perfect.
That'll do it for another episode of the Be Awesome podcast. We do obviously encourage and appreciate any 5-star rating and review. It does help us with our overall rating of our podcast. If we don't deserve the 5-star rating and review, let us know. It's josh@beawesome.com, BEAUSM.com. Love to hear your feedback, and would love to get your support. As this helps us greatly, and we're full steam ahead again after travel hiatus. And as always, thank you, Adam and ECAT Studio, for taking such good care of me and let me come in here and chop it up for the day. And that'll do it from here. And just remember, you are awesome.
Come to you from underneath a peach blossom. It's time for an episode of Be Awesome. Find positivity throughout your life and work. Just like our mascot rooster, Steve the Jerk.